Have you ever had the strange feeling that what you call reality is actually a veil? As if something inside you knew there was a greater truth, but the world around you never confirmed it? What if I told you that this truth exists, but it has been erased, hidden, forbidden, not by chance, but because it has the power to activate something that can no longer be controlled? These words attributed to Jesus never made it into your Bible. They were considered too dangerous to be canonized. But whoever reads them with an awake heart understands why. This is no ordinary gospel. It is a code, a living code, vibrating between the lines of history and ready to be recognized by those who carry the calling of the soul. The chosen ones, those who feel displaced from the ordinary world from an early age, are not lost. They were positioned, trained by pain, honed by silence, guided by the invisible. Carl Jung would call this symbolic remembering of the self, a type of ancestral wisdom that cannot be learned. It must be awakened. It's as if the ancient soul already knew these codes, even without ever having read them. And today, perhaps for the first time, you will feel them and understand why you are not like others. What we are going to reveal here is not found in self-help books, nor in religious pulpits. It is in an ancient Gnostic manuscript discovered in 1945 in the Egyptian desert. There, in forgotten words, Jesus left 7 spiritual codes that only the chosen ones can decipher. And alongside Carl Jung's ideas, we will unravel each of them. For the kingdom of God is not in heaven nor in the future. He's hiding inside you, waiting for you to come home. If these words have already started to spark something inside you, perhaps it makes sense to continue this journey with us. If you want, you can subscribe to the channel now. That way, with each new code revealed, you'll receive the call at the right time. The kingdom of the Father is spread over the earth and men do not see it. This phrase attributed to Jesus is not a religious metaphor. It is a spiritual and psychological sentence. It destroys the logic of waiting and future reward. The kingdom is not a destination. It is a frequency. You don't have to die to find it. You just have to wake up. Carl Jung said that what you do not bring to consciousness becomes your destiny. And maybe that's why so many people live as if they were lost, even though they're already in paradise. The truth is that most people have been trained to seek God above, in the beyond, in the afterlife. But what if the divine had never left? What if he was hiding right where no one is looking, in the now? This is the spiritual click that changes everything. Inner awakening does not require a map. It requires presence. And that's why the chosen ones always feel out of place, because they're already within what others are still seeking. They just didn't know that they were with their eyes closed in a sacred place. Jung called this projection, when you throw out what you don't recognize inside. We project the kingdom of God into a distant heaven because we were taught not to look within. But every inner portal only opens when you stop searching and start remembering. And it is at this point that the chosen ones begin to distrust the system, the routine, the ready-made answers. They feel there is something wrong with the world, when in fact, the mistake was forgetting what was already true. This is the first spiritual code. The kingdom was never out there. You are the holy ground. If you feel like the world is losing its color, that everything seems mechanical and soulless, maybe it's not depression, maybe it's a symptom of awakening. This emptiness may just be your unconscious telling you that you are ready for something bigger. Jung and spirituality go hand in hand when we understand that this silent call is, in fact, an invitation to remember the self. And the self, for Jung, is the living center of the psyche, the point where heaven and earth touch within us. Therefore, the chosen ones do not wait for the sky to fall. They feel when the kingdom begins to rise from within. At this point, you may be asking yourself, but how does one live in this kingdom? How does one see the invisible? This question cannot be answered with words. It is answered with spiritual vision. And spiritual vision is not about seeing further. It's about seeing better what's already here. Gnostic manuscripts such as the Gospel of Thomas teach us that this gaze begins with everyday life, in the smell of coffee, in the pain that tightens the chest, in the silence between two thoughts. The kingdom is in the cracks, in the details, and that's what the next code will reveal. Know what is before your face, and what is hidden will be revealed. This saying attributed to Jesus is not at all enigmatic. It is direct, almost provocative. The hidden truth is not in the clouds, in rituals, in doctrines. It is right in front of your face. But you've gotten used to ignoring it. You pass by it every day. And that's why this second spiritual code seems so simple, but is profoundly transformative. He invites you to look at the obvious with new eyes, as if you had never seen what was always there. Carl Jung called these living symbols. Images, patterns, and signs that arise in reality but carry the weight of the unconscious. The self, this sacred psychic center, does not speak with words. It speaks with synchronicities, hunches, subtle repetitions. And all this happens in the realm of everyday life, not in the extraordinary. This is why the chosen ones live with the feeling that something is trying to talk to them all the time. It's not paranoia, it's refined spiritual perception. It's as if the soul is slowly trying to wake up the mind that is still sleeping. How many times have you had déjà vu and ignored it? Or have you felt a strange discomfort in a seemingly normal environment? These little experiences are not failures of reason, they are invitations from the unseen. The awakening of consciousness begins when you stop classifying everything as normal. Because the normal, for those who have been conditioned to live on autopilot, is exactly what blocks the spiritual click. And only those who silence the noise of the world can hear what is whispering behind the routine. The second code does not ask you for faith, it asks for attention. Pay attention to what repeats itself most in your day. Names, songs, symbols, sensations. Don't dismiss coincidences, write them down, reflect, feel them, because many times what you call chance is the self sending signals. And as Jung said, what you need to know is always close at hand. But only eyes trained by silence can see. Maybe you are waiting for a miracle to happen. But what if the miracle is already happening right now, and you just haven't learned to recognize it? This code is not about looking further, it's about feeling closer. It is in this field of the ordinary that the extraordinary is hidden. The Gnostic manuscripts are clear in stating that the invisible only reveals itself to those who look deeply. And the chosen ones are precisely those who, even without knowing it, were already looking differently. The portal is not a golden door in the middle of the desert. It's the loving look of someone who understands you without words. It's the shiver of nothing, the comfortable silence, the tear that falls for no reason. These are the accesses, the shortcuts, the codes in action. And if you've come this far with an open heart, you may have already crossed one of them without realizing it. But to continue, you need something more. Something that religion has taught you to deny. When you make the inside like the outside, and the outside like the inside, then you will enter the kingdom. This saying is not ethical advice. It is a spiritual and psychological formula. Religion taught you to seek purity. Jesus taught wholeness. The true path is not about denying the shadow to be light. It is about integrating both. Carl Jung would say that the shadow, that which you repress, hide, or reject, is the gateway to spiritual transformation. And the chosen ones know this. Even if it takes them years to accept this truth, the shadow is not the evil in you. It is the forgotten part of your light. It's your potential locked away, your anger unheard, your sexuality denied, your sadness silenced. When you ignore all this, you live half-heartedly, as if you were always fighting against yourself. But when you look at the shadow with courage and compassion, something magical happens. You stop being a battlefield and become a temple of inner reconciliation. And that is exactly where true spiritual transformation begins. Jung called this process individuation, the path of becoming who you really are. It's a journey of deep self-knowledge, where you stop trying to be good and start being whole. In this way, spirituality without religion takes on a new meaning. You don't need an external temple, because the true altar is where shadow and light embrace within you. The chosen ones often experience long periods of isolation, sadness, or disconnection, not because they are weak, but because they are being prepared to carry the entirety of the soul. When you deny your shadow, it doesn't go away. It manifests in addictions, repetitive patterns, self-sabotage. But when you integrate it, it turns into strength, intuition, creativity. Ancient Gnostic manuscripts speak of the union of opposites as a sacred path, and the hidden Jesus, far from the indoctrinated figure, knew that the kingdom only manifests itself in those who become the dwelling place of paradox. You can be strong and sensitive, calm and intense, divine and human. The chosen ones are not perfect angels. They are souls brave enough to be real. So if today you feel ashamed of your inner mess, perhaps you are facing your greatest spiritual key, because the door to self-knowledge is not polished. It is raw, alive, sincere. And in that process, the spiritual click happens. You stop running away from yourself, and you begin to feel that every part of your story, even the darkest, brought you here for a reason. You stop punishing yourself for not being light all the time, and you begin to experience the fullness that only those who embrace the shadow can experience. Now take a deep breath and observe yourself. What are you still struggling to hide from yourself? This question may be uncomfortable, but it holds a portal, because deep within your pain, there is a spark of truth, and that spark just needs space to ignite. But be careful. Not everything you feel needs to be cured. Some pains need to be expressed. And that's what the next code is about. What is not lived poisons you from the inside. If you don't bring out what's inside you, it will destroy you. This saying is not a threat. It is a spiritual and psychological law, because everything you don't live continues to live inside you, suffocated, imploding, screaming in silence. Carl Jung called this the unlived life. What you repress becomes a symptom. Anxiety, psychosomatic illnesses, repeating patterns. None of this is a coincidence. They are disguised forms of an ancient soul trying to remind you of who you are. You can even hide your pain from others. You can bury your dreams, silence your impulses, ignore your intuition, but don't think it disappears. It just changes shape. Anger turns into chronic irritation. Desire turns into frustration. Ignored intuition turns into paralysis. And before you know it, you're living a life that doesn't feel like it's yours, because it really isn't. You are just surviving on the draft of who you could have become. And that is why this spiritual code needs to be faced with courage. The chosen ones feel this discomfort more strongly, because from an early age, they carry within them a calling that does not fit into common mold. And when they try to live like everyone else, pretending not to see, not to feel, not to know, they get sick inside. Jung and spirituality meet at this point, in the understanding that the soul becomes ill when it is not listened to. And the more you ignore the call of the soul, the more life begins to scream through circumstances. Toxic relationships, repeated failures, nameless anxieties, everything starts to become a warning. This code is an invitation to liberation. But don't think it's something mystical or unattainable. In practice, you can start by writing a letter that will never be sent. You can dance what you feel even without technique. You can scream into your pillow, cry without judging yourself. The important thing is to create paths for the soul to speak, for the inner portal to open. Because this repression is not divine punishment. It is physics of the soul. Accumulated pressure needs release, and when it finds, it does not destroy. It heals, transforms, liberates. So don't underestimate the discomforts that come back. They're not signs of weakness, they're coded messages. And the more you decode what you feel, the more lightness you experience. Maybe you believed it would be selfish to put yourself first. But the truth is that ignoring who you are is what destroys you. The chosen soul was not born to hide. It was born to express, to channel, to set the world on fire with its presence. But before that, you need to turn on your own light. And that's the next code. There is a light within a person of light. If it does not shine, there will be darkness. This saying is not poetry. It is a warning, because the greatest darkness in the world does not come from the absence of God, but from the absence of awakened people. For centuries, they have taught that light comes from above, from outside, from someone higher. But Jesus, this hidden Jesus of the Gnostic manuscripts, said otherwise. The light does not come down. It is born from within, or it is not born. Carl Jung understood this deeply. For him, the self, the highest center of the psyche, was the living symbol of the divine within us. Not something that comes from outside, but a presence that needs to be activated. And the spiritual click only happens when you realize that your soul is not waiting for a miracle. It is the miracle. The chosen ones feel it as an inner fire, silent but constant. A kind of inner light that pulsates even when everything seems dark. But the world does everything to extinguish that light. Since childhood, you are trained to obey, to be silent, to conform. The system rewards those who repeat, not those who feel. And little by little, the light retracts. It becomes shy, forgotten. You begin to doubt your own light. And worse, you begin to seek it from outside. That's where spiritual dependence arises. When you forget that you are a temple, not a visitor. This code is a reminder. You don't have to ask permission to shine. Its brightness doesn't blind anyone. It activates those nearby. And if your light bothers you, maybe you're just illuminating the shadows of others. The awakened soul does not live to please. It lives to expand. And even though it's scary, it's what makes her a beacon in the dark. The chosen ones are not perfect. They are brave enough to shine their light, even when they tremble. You can turn on that light today. It doesn't need a ritual. It needs a decision. Breathe. Place your hand on your chest. Close your eyes. Feel that gentle warmth pulsing within you. That is the divine spark. She never left. She was just waiting for you to remember. And once it's lit, it never goes out. Now, imagine what happens when you reconcile with your own light. When you accept that the divine inhabits you, it does not visit you. When you stop hiding behind modesty and start living as a presence. This changes everything. Because the world doesn't need more followers, it needs living portals. But for light to have strength, it needs a foundation. And that only happens when you make peace with all the parts within yourself. If two make peace in this house, they will say to the mountain, "Move," and it will move. This house is not made of bricks. It is its interior. The two are not external people, but forces within you. Reason and intuition, action and surrender, shadow and light. Carl Jung would say it is the union of opposites, the integration of the unconscious with the conscious. And this integration has a hidden power. It changes reality, not by magic, but by deep alignment between what you feel, think, and live. Many people spend their lives trying to manifest something out there, but they forget that true manifestation begins within. You can say all the prayers in the world, but if your soul is divided, the universe will not respond. Not because he doesn't want to, but because he can't. External reality is a vibrational reflection of your internal structure, and where there is war within, there is confusion without. The chosen ones, because they carry old souls, are generally born with this internal conflict more evident. They feel at once sensitive and strong, profound and misunderstood, spiritual and intensely human. For a long time they try to choose a side, as if they have to be one or the other. But the true path is reconciliation, not choosing sides, but uniting worlds. And it is at this point that deep spirituality reveals itself as a healing practice, when you no longer try to overcome chaos, but embrace it as part of the whole. Jung said that the self only emerges when opposites embrace. And when that happens, the soul stops bleeding to fit together. You stop forcing yourself to be only light, only reason, only sweetness, and you begin to experience the strength that comes from coherence, being exactly who you are. In this state of inner union, the world seems to change, and it does, because the frequency you emanate changes the field around you. This spiritual code is a call to listen to the parts of yourself that you still avoid. Maybe the tired part of you, the part that made a mistake, that screams, that feels afraid. They're not there to sabotage you. They're asking for reconnection. When you listen to these inner voices, not as enemies but as fragments of the soul trying to return to the center, you create an inner field of peace. And where there is peace, the impossible becomes possible. The mountain moves not because you command it, but because you made it whole. And then the question arises, who are you after this integration? You are no longer a spectator of life, you become a co-author. You no longer have to beg for miracles, you walk with them, and that turns you into a rare, magnetic, living presence. But the seventh code goes further. It does not speak about light nor about peace. He talks about the incarnation of the divine, not in someone, in you. Whoever drinks from my mouth will become as I am. These words do not call for worship, they call for courage. Because Jesus didn't want followers, he wanted conscious mirrors. This is the most hidden code, and therefore the most powerful. The call was never to worship someone far away, but to awaken what is already within you. Carl Jung saw this as the ultimate achievement of individuation, becoming what you are, in essence, one with the divine. Religion has organized this master as an unattainable idol, but the Jesus of the Gnostic manuscripts is different, closer, more symbolic, more revolutionary. He did not just point the way with words, he embodied the way. And when he said that, whoever drinks from my mouth will be as I am, he was transmitting a frequency, not a doctrine, a type of spiritual activation capable of dissolving the veil between the human and the divine. And that's not a concept, it's destiny, especially for the chosen ones. Jung believed that the self was the archetypal symbol of wholeness, the unifying center of the psyche and spirit. In practice, this means that the spiritual journey is not about escape, nor about aerial ascension. It's about conscious embodiment, bringing God within and expressing him through your own humanity, not as someone perfect, but as someone whole, lucid, awake. This is what the chosen ones feel deep in their chest, that there is something too big inside them to remain dormant, and that something is not vanity, it is a mission. This code is a call to action for those who are tired of waiting for external validation, for those who have already realized that there is no more time to diminish themselves. Following is safe, comfortable, predictable, but becoming requires renunciation, presence, surrender, and the chosen ones are those who, even trembling, say yes, because they know they were created not to repeat a pattern, but to represent a forgotten truth. You are not an extension of religion, nor a number in spiritual statistics. You are a channel of the sacred, a transmitter of a light that only you can carry. And no matter how much you tried to fit into the world, deep down, you always knew there is something in you that can no longer be postponed, and that something is not a search. It is a memory, the reminder that you were not called to follow, but to become. And now, with the 7 codes activated, something changes. You can no longer go back to being who you were before. Because the truth, once felt, does not remain silent. It becomes a path, and this path is yours. But it is not a lonely one, because when a chosen one awakens, he becomes the light that ignites others. If you've come this far, it's not by chance. It may have seemed like just another video among so many, but if something inside you was silent, vibrated, became emotional, or felt that it was with you, it's because it's always been with you. The pain you carry, the emptiness that accompanies you, the questions that no one has ever been able to answer, were signs of the call that has now finally been answered. Jesus' 7 forbidden codes are not just knowledge. They are memory, reconnection, frequency, and only the chosen ones, those who have felt like they didn't belong, who have been labeled too sensitive or too intense, can feel and know what these words carry. Because the chosen soul doesn't need to be convinced. It just remembers. And now that you remembered, there's no way to pretend you didn't see it. The world may even remain the same out there, but something inside you has changed. You are no longer just a seeker. You are the carrier, the bearer of an inner light that did not come to shine alone, but to light up others. You have become a portal, and portals don't explain. They activate. Your presence begins to touch those around you, even without words. So, before you go, take a deep breath. Feel what remains in you after this journey. Which codes touched your soul most strongly? Which passages felt like they were written just for you? This is the time to transform knowledge into a path, and the path in living presence. If this touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and continue with us on this journey. Each new content is a calling, a new spiritual password for those who already feel that they did not come into the world by chance. And if this message found you, it's because you are one of us.